Correct. Yep. Good. I'm bringing this meeting to order. This is Thursday, September 4th at 6:30 p.m. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I usually have a youngin, but I don't see any real youngins out there to do the pledge. I think we can do it ourselves. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We did it ourselves without leadership of the Scouts. It's unbelievable. Let's go to number 2. Oh, and by the way, I see some first timers out here. I'm kind of your master of ceremonies. When you come into the right, you got a little page that says what we're doing in here. So to take a look at that. We are on number 2, the roll call. Evan, if you could do that. Great. Turnbull. Here.
Morosky Brown.
Here.
Carter.
Here.
Janetti.
Here.
Krenz.
Here. Great. We got a full quorum here tonight. So now we are on to the approval of the agenda, number 3. And again, before we get into that, we're meeting in accordance with policies and procedures from the governor's office up in Lansing. This isn't the Open Meetings Act and the whole bit. So everything you see, it kind of follows the Robert's Rules activity. I'm a little loose at times, but from that standpoint, that's how you'll see this, and we'll have comment, and we'll get to that in just a bit. So what you have in front of you, for some of you that are here just to visit tonight, it's a shorter agenda than normal. Maybe we'll actually see sun tonight, but we're looking at the approval of the agenda. We only have 2 things on the agenda right now, quite a few things on the consent agenda that's been out there online. Everybody can read those. So I'm looking, unless there's any changes, the approval of the agenda as you see it. Motion to approve? Motion.
Support it.
We have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great. Let's go to public comment. So tonight we have 2 things on the agenda. If you're here for either of those, I will open it up at that point. If there's anything you want to say other than that, and one is the review of the proposed amendments to fees, fines, and penalty schedule. I don't think you're hanging on each one of those words, so I don't think you're here for that. But if you are, I will open it up. And the second was consideration of approving the second reading and adoption of an amendment for the zoning ordinance to establish standards for rooftop dining. If you're here for that, uses for rooftop dining. So if you're here for either of those 2, I will open it up for that. You have 2 minutes, when you get up there. And I'm not really flexible towards the end of that because sometimes we have hundreds of people. So try to do that to 2 minutes. I will thank you very much for your time at the end on that. So try to condense it to 2 minutes. If there's anything on your mind other than those 2 opportunities, this is your time. And if you come up, I'll open it up here and then I'll open up to those online.
Mayor, just one procedural comment that might help, if you don't mind, is there's been some lag on people who are getting on there. So maybe we could have the instructions read through now before public comments.
And might read it again. That'd be great. So let them know if we can do
so they can queue up all
I'm going to let's you read that, Rob versus me tonight.
Yep.
Go right ahead.
For those calling in, press *9 to raise your hand. Once called on by the last 4 digits of your phone number, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. Please state your name and address for the record.
And we'll do that again. I'm going to open up for public comment here in council chambers. Then you'll read that again very eloquently, don't you know? Duly noted, presently accepted. And then we will go from there. So is there anybody that has comments here tonight other than what's on the agenda? Going once, going twice? Great. I'm not great. I'm always looking for public comment all the time. I'm closing off public comment here in the council chambers. Why don't you read that one more time for people online?
How many people are online?
For those calling in, press *9 to raise your hand. Once called on by the last 4 digits of your phone number, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. Please state your name and address for the record.
Great. We'll give it calling once.
There's
Great.
no one online? Oh, okay.
Great. This is very unusual. We had 143 on one of these meetings online. So not that there's anything wrong with just a few. Going twice. Going 3 times. Okay. I'm closing off public comment. I will get to public comment on the 2 activities on the agenda. We have written communication. So now we're on 4A written communications. We got those in the package right up to 4 o'clock today. You saw some from some people on different boards and some others. So
Although there was quite a few.
there's quite a few, 18 or 19. How many do you remember, Evan? Yeah, my expectation is everybody reads every public comment before they get into their seats here tonight. And I had 15 and then a couple went on at the end too.
Yeah.
So
And
those are all on public record. You can see any comment that people have written in. We know that when we're making decisions here tonight. So feel free, if you can't make it, write in. We will get this in our package and it's online. So feel free, you don't have to be here every time, but we will read your comments.
Just one note is that we have to do speed reading on the public comments, particularly when there's many. We don't get them till after 4 o'clock.
Right.
Right? Today, so we're prepared and looking at the packet, but we get an updated packet that has any and all public comments. So we did read them, but I often will go back and read it more carefully, after the meeting or the next day, because, there could be 30 pages of them. So, but thank you all for everyone that writes them in.
So if you know you're not going to be here for a meeting, it's good. Put it in early, because we can give it to everybody before, but at 4 o'clock, we publish them, we read them, we look at them online, you get the package. So if you want your comment heard, you're out of town, you're up north, you're down south, give us your comments. Thank you very much. Okay, so we got that. We're going to go to number 5, again on the agenda of a life, consideration of approving the following consent agenda. A lot of stuff on the consent agenda there. This is from paying the bills to the 3rd grade Victorian events and the requests and different contracts. It's all there. Sometimes we read it through. I don't think we have to read it through. Is there anything big on that I should know? I know we've read them all. Okay, so you have all the way from A to U. It's kind of at home, how you pay your bills. We have to approve everything that we pay and every little contract that comes in there. This is public record too. It's out there. You can see all the documents behind each and every one of these things too. So I'm looking for approval of the consent agenda. Do I have that on the table?
So moved.
Getting support. Do we have a motion and supported? Any other discussion on that motion to approve this? Great. I think we can do this too. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Great. So we have a consent agenda. So now let's go to number 6, presentations. We have no presentations tonight. Is that correct? Good. Public hearings. We have done our public hearings up to this point. We don't have another one. Unfinished business. I always like to say we finish our business here. So all our business is finished off. Number 9, we have 2 things on the agenda tonight. New business, 9A, review of the proposed amendments of fees, fines, penalties, and schedules. Who's going to do that for us?
We have Sandy and John Kazo, our consultant, coming up. I can just start off very.
Why don't you start off and then John, it's all yours. I think you have 3 slides that you're going to dazzle us on tonight.
So as council knows, this was one of our strategic priorities that was set this past year by city council under the section of high performing government, good governance, fiscal responsibility and accountable organization, provide for stable revenue streams. And the specific goal is to evaluate fees and charges and recommend adjustments as appropriate. This is something that has been sort of hit or miss, I think, fairly stated over the past years. There are some fees that haven't been looked at in a number of years, and there are fees that have been looked at a little bit more regularly. So we think it was a very good exercise and a time-consuming exercise from staff, from our consultant, from Sandy, to really go through comprehensively, to be able to justify the fees and understand exactly what we should be charging, and then to present it to council. So it's a lot of information that the council received. So that's why we're not asking for approval tonight. It's just a presentation on how the study went, what type of information went into it, and all of that, and then give a council a chance to ask any questions, of course. And then if council's looking to that for next time to approve, or if you need more discussion on it as well. So that's where we are to set up. And I don't know if John or Sandy want to take over at this point.
And again, for the public, this is part of strategic planning, looking at our fees, our fines, our penalties. This is information tonight. We will vote on it next time. They've been working on it. Sandy will allude to that, and you'll dazzle us in a second, John. Go right ahead, Sandy.
Yep. So just to refresh your memories, John Kazo from Municipal Analytics has worked on several projects for us. The most recent, the water and sewer rate study for the last 2 years, and the cost allocation plan So we asked him to do the formal user fee study. We are not asking for any motion tonight from council. It's more information open for questions. The
Great.
plan is to bring it back to the next meeting for possible approval.
Great, super. John? All yours. Welcome back again.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Just wanted to go through what we did, and you can go to the next slide. We were asked to look at the city's fees primarily, and develop some recommendations for what is an appropriate fee in today's world. As the manager said, not all fees have been updated regularly or reviewed consistently, so now we have a methodology in place to do that. It involved looking at other communities. We looked at comparable benchmark cities and their fee structures. We did an internal analysis, and that's a lot of what took staff time to really think about how much time and effort and costs goes into each of these services that are provided that are fee-based. And then we developed a spreadsheet to put it all together. And so that spreadsheet now has current fees, when they were last adopted, what the market rates were for those fees, what the internal cost is for those fees, and the city now has that spreadsheet to use in the future. So why user fees? We'll go to the next slide. And what we're trying to do with user fees is, just a refresher, is trying to recover costs that are provided more to individuals and small groups as opposed to the community writ large. So police services, fire services, street maintenance, a lot of those things are community benefits. But there are some things that are really individual. You're applying for a permit for an improvement on your property or for a particular license or business. Those are services that the city provides that benefit a very small number of people or an individual. So it's appropriate to recover those fees or those costs through a fee structure so that all of the city and all the taxpayers aren't paying for that individual's costs. So that's what we're doing with a fee structure and trying to make it make sense. The reason that we put it all together like that is we're trying to reduce the cost of government so that other services can be provided. So rather than taking government services and providing individuals with those benefits, we recover those costs so that the resources can be spread more widely to provide more services for more of the community. We're also looking at standardizing fees. It is possible, theoretically, that somebody comes to the counter and says, I need a building permit, and somebody starts a stopwatch and they start recording who's working on it, what's their hourly rate, how much, ink are we using, and all of that. That's just impossible to track. So we use standardized fees to make it easier for everybody, to make it more transparent. And we're not trying to get an exact number. We're trying to recover an approximate value. We can't know exactly what every service costs for every interaction because everyone is different. So we're trying to establish a minimum that's equitable and fair and reasonable. We'll go to the next slide. So how we develop these fees. There are some of the fees in your fee schedule that are based on the benchmark community's kind of an average number. Some are based on internal costs. Most are based on kind of an average, looking at all of these numbers together and saying what's a reasonable fee. It might cost the city of Northville $100 internally to actually provide the service. But if all the neighboring communities, and this is more of a competitive fee-based service, maybe, if they're charging $50, you want to be a little bit competitive. So we might pull that internal cost down a little bit to be more close to the market. Similarly, if the city's costs are really low or unclear, then we lean towards the market averages and say, okay, this makes more sense. The other thing that we look at is your existing fees. If there's really not a clear basis for what a fee should be based on benchmark or actual internal costs, we look at your current fees and decide whether that's a reasonable number to use going forward. So there's lots of different ways of looking at these things. It is an inexact science. I'll just say that. We're trying to really come up with the best number that we can that is equitable and fair. We are also looking at typical effort. Like I said, there might be an instance where somebody's coming in and providing a service, but rather than using a stopwatch, we just assume that on average it takes 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 6 hours to do this work. That's what we're trying to understand, is what's a reasonable number that people can rely on and the city can get some of its costs back. There are some services that are provided to individuals that also serve as a community benefit. So we look at those and we say, maybe we don't want to recover the full costs because there is a community benefit component of this. Historic District Commission fees is one example. Some of the events for downtown activities. If there's a benefit that the wider community is getting from it, it's reasonable to subsidize that a little bit with general fund dollars, and not fully levy the cost to that particular user. And then there's also the case of providing services that can't be used. Again, we look at the benchmarks and decide whether or not that's a fair representation. Now, I will say that of all the benchmarks that we looked at, not all of them have all of your fees and you don't have all of their fees. So it's a lot of reviewing and saying what's a reasonable approximation to what you're providing and try to be equitable in it. There are fee schedules that list a fee as it sounds about the right thing, but it's not. And we have to go through and check and validate that those are actually comparable fees on both schedules. We go to the next slide. Looking at your revenues and your finances. In the big picture, user fees are not a big revenue source for the city. A relatively small portion of your overall general government budget. Building department is an exception to that. They get a lot of their fees from individuals, and that's the purpose of that department, is to make sure individuals who are making improvements, developing property, are doing it correctly, and it's providing safety for them and for the community. Those fees they're trying to recover and cover their costs as much as possible. You have a lot of development going on in the city right now, so you're getting a lot of revenue coming in. Eventually that will slow down significantly and you will get less revenue. So there will come a time when it's not going to be so self-sustaining, and eventually you may have to relook at the fee schedule or look at how you're providing the service, or say that we're going to have to use some general fund dollars to subsidize that service more, because it's just not, we're not going to be able to recover the costs. The way that you're doing building services inspections, contractors, for the most part, providing that service. So those fees you're paying based on service. There are others that's plan reviews and whatnot that are done internally. You're having to cover those costs internally. So again, we're looking at the mix and the blend of how your costs are being incurred and then how we're generating the revenue to pay for those costs. Similar to the fact that you don't use a stopwatch to measure everything, the city also doesn't account for every single user-based fee or service. So we don't know exactly how many of every one of the fees on the schedule you are actually collecting on. We have a general dollar number. If you were to create a general ledger number for every one of the fees, that would add in a huge administrative burden to the city to actually try to track all that. And there might be some fees that you're collecting once every couple of years. So it's a lot to manage. So again, it's all collapsed into something that's more manageable, more efficient. So we can't tell you how many dollars did we save or increase our revenues. We don't know, because it depends on the level of service, how many people request that service. And we don't know the cost recovery because staff are here no matter what. So if staff are providing service that is a fee-based service, you're recovering some or all of those costs. But when they're not at the counter or working on that particular something, they're doing something else for the city. So that money is being paid for, being paid out of the general fund tax revenues. So it's not exactly known how many dollars you get from every fee service. We're trying to do our best to recover your costs, not generate revenue, but cost recovery, so that we're being fair to both the citizens, developers, whoever's using your services, and to the general taxpayer base. So next steps, and I told them I'd keep this short, so I'm keeping it short.
Great. We appreciate that.
Next steps are, like I said, we provided the city with a spreadsheet that is there that Sandy has and can be updated. It's set up so that you can just select which employees are providing how many minutes of service for each of the benefits, what's the piece of equipment involved, et cetera. And that'll calculate based on those costs, what the actual cost is. Your job obviously is to adopt a fee schedule as part of your budget process. And I know we're a little bit behind the budget process, but we're looking at an April or October 1 implementation of the new schedule if the council decides that that's the right schedule and the right time. So from here, the city will just need to decide how often you're going to update it. Maybe it's an annual thing, maybe it's every 2 years, but you just want to update those numbers. Again, trying to not make it an administrative burden. But you have the tool in place now, numbers can be updated, staff can review things as opposed to spend all the effort into how does this actually work? It's now a quicker review. Maybe some technology comes out, some software that simplifies things. Maybe you've added or removed a staff position that you need to adjust. I wouldn't say it has to be reviewed in detail every year. Every 2 or 3 years is probably fine in detail. That would be my suggestion. So that's the presentation.
Anything to add, Sandy? Again, appreciate you looking at this. We get input from Michigan Municipal League, which George is involved a lot, and SEMCOG and the Conference of Western Wayne. I'm the chair and stuff. We try to use all of that data, and you use the same thing, who's doing what and the ones around. And it's almost been generational on some of these things since we've updated, fees and penalties. So now we're making it easy going forward. We're always looking going forward, making it easier for the next generation. I think this is good.
That's the case.
Yep. And we thank you. I looked through your work. It was great. I'm sure you'll have a lot of individual questions here, but I thank you for looking at that and thank you for condensing it down. I didn't want, I wanted the Reader's Digest version versus War and Peace, but thank you. You did a great job. Questions?
Yeah, well, thank you for going through this exercise. I know that generally, and Sandy can correct me, we get, after we approve the budget, so we're into our current fiscal year, we get an adjustment showing the schedule of fees, the proposed amendments to fees, and they're generally modest, but I think this is the first time we've had a thorough analysis as you described this methodology, and so I'm really appreciative of this. So my question would be, there are likely going to be, as we've had in the past, annual adjustments. How often should we do this type of very rigorous exercise? Every 5 years? Because there may be, if it continues as it has been, we'll get adjustments each year that will come before us.
Right.
But this sort of rigorous methodology and look at fees, how often would you recommend that?
I think you have the option with the tool that I created to update the pay schedule and the equipment rental schedule. And then just go back and look at, did things change much? And maybe you use that as the, maybe you adjust it $5 here or there.
Yeah, well, that's what we've done in the past.
Right.
But, yeah.
And now you'll have a basis for it.
Okay.
And an easy way to update it.
Maybe, right. And then
Thank
maybe
you.
every 5 years, 3 years, how often, if things are changing a lot, you want to do it more regularly. But if things are pretty steady, you could probably go 5 years and then again, send it back to the department heads. Maybe you've got new department heads, new organization structure. Have them look at it and say, yeah, that still makes sense. Or no, now we've got this person involved and that'll update it.
So I just have one, this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but I do. So what I see in here, which is good, I actually see a couple fees that go down, they're not all going up, although that's
generally
reasonably the trend.
Right.
And I see fees that are removed, we don't need anymore, or there's some sort of footnote because it's a partnership with Parks and Rec. So there is some substantive things that are evident in here that we might not see every year because it's not that kind of update. So I really appreciate that. I do have this is in the way, but I have a question. For electrical, mechanical, and plumbing permit fees, we have a new fee that's an application fee for all electrical permits, and this would be the same for all three, right? And then we have a minimum permit fee that's $80. That's an up of 5, right? So how do you, there's a 40 and then there's an 80 and then there's a starting permit fee. So I don't know how, and I see that pattern in the same. How is that?
So the application fee is the actual just processing the application. You haven't been recovering that cost.
which is good to add.
The base fee is just a minimum so that you don't get people coming in and paying $2 or $6 or something for a small project. It establishes a minimum.
So how does that application fee of 40 relate to the minimum permit fee of 80?
They're totally separate.
Okay.
So
It just,
it's-
you know,
It's a floor and a lot of communities have that,
Mhm.
that we don't want to, again, we're trying to not nickel and dime.
Yeah.
We're trying to just say, here's a minimum. Let's go with that. And if you're close to that, that's fine.
Yeah. So when would the 80 kick in?
If somebody comes in and applies and their fee, so let's just throw out something small. Somebody wants to build a little 6x6 deck
Mhm.
on their house. Maybe the cost is $400 and you look at the fee schedule and it's going to be a $42 fee. And you're going to say, no, the minimum permit fee is $80.
So they'd be 80, but okay. So it just was odd and it permeates all three of them.
Yeah.
So I was like, what is that? But
Yeah,
anyway,
and that
that's-
minimum has been there. The new thing, was,
Yeah,
as you
the-
noted, the application.
yeah, the only change to the minimum permit fee is it went from 75 to 80, but then there was a new application fee permit, which
Which was something you haven't been recovering.
yeah, okay. Anyway, that's it. I got in the weeds
No,
but
and
thank
I'm
you
just
very
gonna go
much
in
for
the
your
weeds
effort.
with you for a second and
No,
say
that's
that
good.
we also,
I'll just touch on the application fee.
Yep.
That's, I mean, and Chuck can correct me if I'm wrong, but someone could put an application in and never pick up the permit. And then the city lost the time and effort of the review of that. So they got nothing, but the application just sat there. So work was given, no money paid. They never pick up an application or something like that. So putting something on the application just makes sense. on that.
fee.
Yeah.
It's when submitted.
so the other part of the weeds is we also looked at a lot of ordinances to see, and that's why we removed some of these because there's no basis for them or ordinance change.
Which is great.
And I know Michaela's working on compiling another column in the spreadsheet that will have, what's the ordinance reference for these. So, we looked at a
That'd be
few and
great.
said, do we still really need that? And then after a review of the ordinance, like, oh, yep, it's in the ordinance. So we need to have something.
Oh, and doing that, I mean, it's a very tedious exercise to do once, but in terms of updates,
It's done.
it's much easier, right? Because you can look and know what ordinance was updated during the year. And
We'll let you in a little secret. We actually have some of that data. So we're not starting from scratch, luckily.
Yep.
We're going to be able to update it from some older documents and then just update.
it'll
So
just be,
we're not going to have someone pour through, hundreds.
You've received questions
Good.
along those lines from members of
We're
council.
not starting from zero, but it is still we want to make sure it's proper and that
Good to
it's
know.
all linked to the
That's great.
ordinances.
And I just have one
Okay.
question. The public hearing fee, I think that's kind of a cost of doing business, but I just wondered how you felt about that public hearing fee.
How do I feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, for what reason would we charge for that?
There's a cost involved in preparing for a public hearing.
Okay.
And again, that is a benefit that benefits somebody.
Why'd you explain?
Justin can explain, but I think we have postings and notices that have to go out, so there's staff time. Would that typically refer to notices in the paper, notices out to residents?
Mhm.
So there could actually be quite a bit of work. I'll keep talking while Justin walks to the podium, but, and
I
then he
think that's
can
planning.
take
Sorry,
the
Justin.
actual details of it, which is not.
Steps in.
George is exactly right. And oftentimes, so the $275 proposed fee is supposed to cover the mailings. There's a legal ad in the newspaper. Oftentimes, depending on the length of the legal ad, it could be more than $275. It's expensive to post in the newspaper. So, and
Okay.
then there's the staff time of stuffing envelopes, the postage. And so that's all that goes into it.
With that, will they get a postage addition as well, or just that's a flat fee?
It's just a flat fee
Okay.
and we do all the work. So they don't have to do the mailings. They don't have to go to the newspaper. We do it all.
Okay.
I'll follow up on that. That's a good question. Is, say an applicant has to come back a second time and then the fee structure remains constant the second time. I was just wondering if there's something we can look at in the future state for applicants that have to come back multiple times, and it may be at the discretion at the board, but it seems like a penalty on the residents to some extent. I don't
So
think
there,
we weigh in on that.
the HDC fees are the only fee that have a proposed 25% if you have to come back. It's currently 50%. And so we'd actually be So- reducing that fee.
Okay.
Yeah, I would, that was one of my items as well. My ask there, because that's one of the biggest complaints I get. And we discussed at the beginning that HDC is a public benefit. It's something that we all have decided we want as a community. And if somebody has reached out, one of the biggest complaints I get is I reached out, I pulled my packet together, I validated and confirmed that it was complete. And then I went and presented, and now I have to go get additional information. I'm paying out of cost to come back and present again, and I'm getting hit with a fee. So to me, it's on us from a process standpoint. If we weren't able to say your packet's not complete and there's an additional ask, we shouldn't be then penalizing them again on top of their time by adding additional fees. So I would propose we actually eliminate that to 0% if you have to come back. I understand we still want them to come back. We still want to get the right answer, but I don't want to keep charging people over and over again after we've told them their packet was complete once. So I understand we work as hard as we can to try to work through and make that a smooth process, but I don't want the penalty to come on the resident for that.
I concur.
And you're reviewing those packages quite a bit these days, sure.
So that we're actually reviewing all HTC applications in-house. That was previously done by a third party.
Right.
So that's a staff effort now, but there's still obviously the staff cost, but we actually reduce some of the HTC fees in your packet. We've recommended reducing. So we were cognizant of that.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about that in the past, but it's definitely, even I think the people who live in the HDC love being in that community, but it's a frustration that comes up.
And I think that's why you're doing the policies and procedures. Everybody's involved now. If they say it's complete, it should be complete. If they come back and we say, oh, it's not complete, it should be on us. So
Yep,
that's
agreed.
why some things got reduced. So thank you for rallying your troops on that. Go ahead, Barbara.
Oh, one last, if we're talking about big change, brownfield redevelopment, did you notice that one?
Noticed that one.
So brownfield redevelopment fee went from being, well, I think it needs an edit because it says the application fee is non-refundable and is based on total project investment. So we're not doing that anymore, right? So we probably just need to edit that. But now it's $5,000, whereas before it ranged from 1,000 to 4,000. Based on how it was under 1 to 5, under 5 million, it was this. So if for somebody's coming, we've got brownfields all over the place, even where we don't know we have them. We know that because you start some work, you put a shovel on the ground and you find out, oops. In fact, the garage restaurant right across the street was a brownfield. So when I look, we think of a big project and it would probably fall under the 4,000. So it would be $1,000 increase. But what about the small project that is a brownfield that's going to get hit with the 5,000? Is there any flexibility that could be in that?
Not everybody might understand. Brownfield is, contaminated land, asbestos, this and that. We had brownfield down at the Downs. We'll have brownfield on some other projects, the Foundry Flask. These are usually larger projects. So just so you know, that's brownfield money is like 10 cents on our dollar to federal, state, county, Paul puts money in there to clean things up. So just so you know, our money goes like tenfold on that.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm on the brownfield board.
But just to say what a brownfield is.
Yeah.
If you're cleaning up dirty
is there any
buildings
flexibility for when we have a small developer?
I would really
Comment?
recommend the flat fee because the staff effort is the same regardless of the value of the project.
Okay.
And it's, the city manager, the finance director, myself, and it's, brownfield projects span a number of years. And so it's more than just a one-time, you're in and you're out, you get your plan approved and it's done. The staff work continues even after the, council is adopted.
Oh, yeah. But the developers pay a lot in fees for the consultants that are required, which is very rigorous.
And you reviewed a lot of the other communities
have
around, and we
higher
are
than that.
unbelievable reasonable compared to most out there.
But at a
So-
minimum, just need to edit that it's no longer based on total project investments.
Yep,
right?
I think that would be my biggest question
Okay.
was how do we compare to other communities if it's consistent and they're using a single flat fee that's aligned to the cost of the city and the price is consistent with what other communities have that want to be encouraging brownfield redevelopment opportunities, then I think we could get a lot behind it and support it.
Absolutely.
And we could have residential brownfields in the future because of the amendments to the act.
I have one other that Within tree preservation, the fees make sense from a tree replacement fee, permit application fee. I did notice we added a new fee for the city arborist review. My concern there, and I want to make sure I understand it, is I don't want to disincentivize people from checking if they think they have a tree that has issues. From a public safety standpoint, would rather have us encouraging people to get those checked out. And then they could respond by taking it down or managing it appropriately. So that's if we're adding that in as a new fee, it feels like a public safety issue.
I wouldn't say
As
it's
much
a
as a
new
user
fee,
fee.
it's just codifying existing policies. So right now, the ordinance describes that if, like, for example, a commercial application it requires a city arborist review. We hold money in escrow, so we'll typically take
Okay.
$1,000. And if it's only $500 for the arborist to review it, then the applicant gets the other 500 back.
Okay.
If it's
Great.
$1,100.
Your
then
point,
they
is the
get
tree good
invoiced.
or not
So-
to take down? Yep.
But that's not for 95% of the tree permits.
Okay, so that would not, like if I think of the majority of our residential where you have an arborist come out to check it, that doesn't
That would
apply
not
there.
apply.
Okay, so just so that we can make sure, I mean, we might want to
I think-
clarify that or
I
make
think
sure
that would
that's
help
clear
when we
within.
get the ordinance section
Yeah.
tied to it, because that'll refer back to what's considered a major application.
Yep.
Minor
Minor.
applications don't fall under that.
Yeah, I know one of our challenges has been getting people to manage that process appropriately, not take down trees without getting the review. And on the flip side, also making sure if they have a troubled tree to have an arborist come take a look at it. And so I just want to make sure we're creating a policy that incentivizes the actions we're looking for.
And we are more flexible on taking
Your
those
new
trees
tree
down. I
ordinance.
mean, we did a whole brand new tree ordinance, which the planning commission did a great job for years and we just enacted that.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Other questions?
Just one for me, the cemetery fees, looks like there was some bumps on that. Do those fees flow into the cemetery capital fund? We know, I don't know if that goes to you, Sandy.
Mike or Sandy.
You're closer. Well played.
So the cemetery fees are, they come from either the sales of the grave sites or from the services provided opening and closing grave sites. So it all goes into the general fund to cover any of those costs, and anything beyond that gets split between the public improvement fund, which is reserved for improvements to the cemetery, and the other part goes into the cemetery trust fund.
Okay, that's what I was.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and we do need to align that with charter, but you know that for next year, we need to look at that because unusually the charter specifies any excess goes to the cemetery fund, but I think there's a way we can work through that, so.
Thank you.
Great. Others? So this was information only, right?
Correct.
You do not
Next meeting.
look at those inputs and we will go from there.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for the work. Thank you for the work. You good, Justin,
So-
too?
Is there any more questions? Because I can just summarize that
Yeah, please.
we would bring it back with one change, which was reduce the second hearing to 0 for the HDC. Was there anything else in that item? And then the other one was the brownfield removing the value of the project, which was a type.
Right.
It was just, yeah, that was a
So
technical.
those are the only
we
two
removed those
changes we
two.
heard. And if we can put those changes in, if council all nods, and then council can have that document to approve. And of course, between now and then, if you look and have something else to discuss, we have something else to discuss and council can make a motion at that time. But we will make it with those changes and bring it back for council's consideration in 2 weeks.
Right, and I will expect you to look at the.
Would
package
the ordinances
now.
be added for that meeting or is that going to be a fast follow?
Ordinances for
We had talked about for each of the fees tagging which ordinance relates to that fee.
that, I'm not 100% certain. But
Yeah, I'm not sure if we'll have that by the next.
That might be a
meeting.
big ask.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
but we can prepare that. That document will be prepared. It may not be prepared for the approval.
because you're just adding a column
just-
to this, not just, it's the content of the column.
It's filling in the column that adds the.
No, I
Thanks
didn't
on
mean-
that next column that
did
she's
not
working
mean
on the
that.
spreadsheet. I got you. Yep. It just-
George said, well, we have most of that information
Yeah,
already.
and it's not a separate document. It'll be
No.
internally addition, which is
Yeah.
perfect.
You're
Yeah.
just doing the new
It's not
spreadsheet.
reference anyway to be able to just say that it points back to a certain ordinance and that's why you don't change it, or we have to change it with an ordinance. We can't just change it. One thing.
The
Right.
group will check it.
We will check it.
It's fun, just chase it back.
So with that, closing it off for comments from council members. Anybody that has any comments on this opportunity here today? This is on the fees, fines, penalties, the schedules. We're reviewing it for the future.
some of these haven't been reviewed for a generation. So we're trying to get modern and get ready for one of your youngins. Oh, Mr. Purdue, you could have done our,
Mr. Purdue.
when you're, the mayor up here, you know, if I would have saw you earlier, you would have done the Pledge of Allegiance and the whole thing. Thank you very much. Is there any comments here from the audience? Going once? Going twice? Great. We discussed it. We got it. All right. Now online, let's say it one more time. Yep.
Is there anybody online now?
Wow, I
There's
can't believe it. They're out enjoying the weather tonight. We'd like to be too.
Well,
Do
no,
it,
if,
do it, do it real quick.
For those calling in, press star 9 to raise your hand. Once called on by the last 4 digits of your phone number, you can unmute yourself by pressing star 6. You will please state your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. So they're watchers and callers? Yep. So there's people on there. They just don't have their hands raised right now.
people are online.
Yep.
They're watching, but they're not on the phone.
30 total.
Yeah. So there's
Okay.
30 people out there. They're just not raising their hand. I know everybody's thinking, oh, is it really on tonight? It is. Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay. I'm closing off public comment online. Okay. So let's go to 9B. This is consideration of approving the second reading and adoption of amendment to the zoning ordinance to establish the standards for rooftop uses in certain zoning districts. We've had some input on that. We had some writings. Tell us about that. We went through this once before and you brought us up to speed on it. Tell us again, Justin.
So you, council, approved the first reading at your last meeting. Since that time, or at that time, there was discussion regarding an exception for residential units in the zoning districts that were affected. The mayor, at your suggestion, I worked with the planning commission chairperson to draft some language, and that's what you see redlined in your packet. It's not exactly what the planning commission wanted, but it bridges the gap with what was discussed last week at council. It is a very narrow exception, so there aren't many that would qualify or be eligible. But again, the intent was to try to bridge the gap, keeping both groups' intentions in mind.
Great. Well, let me start first. Thank you for working with the Planning Commission, with Donna. I know they've been working on the rooftop activities for a while, and you've gotten input back and forth. And the group Planning Commission does an outstanding job. Each and every one of those are professionals. We look and consider each one of our 27 boards and committees with great consideration. We then have to make a decision.
And I will mention, we talked about it last time, but there is a part 2 to this on the horizon that will scoop up the residential units in the other districts. You know, right now this affects certain districts. Planning Commission will do part 2. We'll bring that back to you. This exemption, could potentially go away at that point, depending on how the new ordinance is written. And so while it's not written in there as temporary, this could be addressed in a part 2 to regulate the residential uses in this district in a manner that's consistent with residential rooftops and in other districts.
Again, thank you for working with Planning Commission. I know I suggested that strongly. They do a lot of work there. 90%, 95%, we usually go with all the recommendation, but there's always honing and fine tuning, whether it be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more stringent. I will open it up. Everybody saw this. We liked it mostly last time. We had a couple pieces of honing and you worked with Planning Commission. I'll open it up right now. Anything from the last meeting to this, what you've seen on it too. Go right ahead.
Okay. So one is that, just to clarify, is that what is different in this one, which is the red line that we see in the packet, is only a section that was added on applicability, because there was not a section on applicability. It was implied, but it wasn't asserted. And it was my request, but I'll get into that in a moment, about a section on applicability as it related to residential that was not multifamily. And I did not know what the definition of ordinance, specifically, but it's my understanding, and you working with the chair of the Planning Commission, that under our ordinance, multifamily is 3 or more dwelling units within a building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that was, so you both agreed that because it was very targeted, it wasn't all residential, because it was very clear that the planning commission did want multifamily, which is defined as 3 or more in our ordinance, to be included in this. And what I did last time was, as I said, look for that applicability for the exemption for that 1 or 2 dwelling units that are residential. And I'll go back to my request then was for that exemption. And I did attend, I can't say every, but just about, they had many over the past few years, many discussion on rooftop uses. From their inception through
Right.
concept, through back and forth to where they turned it over to you more recently this year. And I'm fully supportive. I think it's great that they did this. And they're, in my listening to them over time, their original intent in this was, as it stands now, rooftop uses are fully allowed everywhere on commercial and residential. They just have to meet building code. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, so they're, and there, so that was, we're not allowing something that was not allowed before, we're just putting a little regulation around it, correct?
Correct.
But they wanted to make sure that, so by putting it in here affirmatively, rooftop uses are allowed. Before it was silent on it. So this affirmatively addresses it in the ordinance, number 1. And number 2, they wanted to encourage them, but at the same time, address things that weren't covered by the building code, right? And
Right.
primarily safety issues. And I support that as well. The third is that they didn't want to be punitive. They wanted to still encourage, but still have address those safety issues. The last is they decided to do this in 2 parts, which you mentioned. The first, they decided to focus on commercial and then have a part 2 that's residential. The way they approach this is not to do it by the use of the building, but to do it by the zoning district it's in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, so when I look at this, I fully support commercial because that's where public use.
Mhm.
So you mentioned rooftop dining. Rooftop dining would
Right.
be under that. So that's anything they use on the top, the type of railing, all of that they would use on the top. So they have to secure it. It's enumerated in here and we didn't touch any of that. It's all of those
Yep.
words are still there, identical to what we had to begin with.
Very stringent.
Yeah, but where, the reason so that's why I asked for the exemption, because as it relates to residential that are not multifamily, not the larger buildings, but a single residential or a 1 dwelling unit or 2 dwelling units, in residential terms, that would be a single family or a duplex. That if they happen to be in this district, whether they're standalone or over a commercial building, they're being treated differently than the same type of building that would be in a residential district, right? So I just thought it was, from a public policy standpoint, unfair to treat those residents and building owners different than every place else in the city. They could literally be on the next block and they'd have different regulations. So that was the carve out, with the idea that when they get to their part 2, hopefully they'll be able to address it in the next year or so, that these would then be scooped up to whatever they decide on those. Because they sense that if it's a public use resident, rooftop or terrace, there's different safeguards that are necessary than if it's a residential. So I, appreciate the mayor, saying reach out to which was unusual because usually it comes to us, so we know what their will is, right? And in this particular case, and I'm going to address a few things because I was surprised, there's a 2-page document from the chair of the planning commission in our public comments, so I wasn't able to read it till after 5 o'clock. But it was a bit of scorched earth, so I sense her anger in this.
It's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity, and I have such great respect for the chair, really a lot, and I continue to have that. But in this, she says that we're going away from the original intent. We are not. And it's very narrow and we accept this. I think there was, because of something she wrote on page 2, I think, a few commissioners, planning commissioners have talked to me over the past couple months. They were not happy with when the generator ordinance came before us, and between the first and second reading, there was a lot of change. Now, we brought it back to really close, but there was a lot of anger of how that went down because it came back with wholesale changes that they were not comfortable with, which we moderated, right? We came, that's how this works. We came together as a body, made the change, reduced the changes and made it. But I think there's some of that lingering here, that anger about that one. This is different. This is extremely narrow. And it does still go along with their original intent. And also, when you were directed to consider drafting this exemption to see, because that I suggested it, but then I turned to my fellow council members and say, what do you think? Because just because I requested it doesn't, and 2 other council members were comfortable seeing what you drafted, right? And then one was silent and then you had directed, ask the planning commission. So I don't think you mentioned whether you're pro or con. So it wasn't just me directing it, nor was I going to write it. What it is here is, you had drafted something and then you worked with Donna. But when I saw it, I was a bit surprised because the applicability section, as it's in our packet, doesn't change anything from the first time. So it's a lot of words. It's confusing. But one is that my intent was for any of a single dwelling unit or a 2 dwelling unit, that would be those that currently exist, because we have several of them in town currently in these districts, but also any future ones, to not penalize them or treat them differently. One is that this carves out and says, I'm only going to give the exception to something that's currently there. So anything in the future is not exempt. So I disagree with that because it's being punitive. We want to encourage it, not discourage it. And the other is that if they make an alteration to their current, under the exemption goes away. So say you had a residential use that falls under this exemption and they had to put a new railing on, or they had to put a new floorboard, on the surface. Now they wouldn't be exempt anymore. And so that fundamentally doesn't, again, it's treating these residences different than in the residential districts. And the last is that it was kind of unusual in this case because one of the things that are said in this letter, there's many things that are not accurate, but one is that if we have a problem with something they're going down a road on, that council should give them feedback as early guidance, right? That we have a problem with something. That doesn't mean they have to listen to us, but let them know that they're going down a path. In this particular sense, because before they gave the ordinance revision, the guidance to Justin, what they did was it had this, they didn't exempt these residential. So it was very unusual. But at the planning commission, I let them know, I just want you to know, are you aware you're including these 2 type of residential units, the single or other than multifamily? And I said, and I have a concern with that because I don't think it's fair or equitable to other districts, relative to other districts. Now, they didn't agree with me, nor did they have to, but I did say that. So there's several claims in the letter that we didn't know, you didn't tell us. That doesn't mean they had to listen to us. I fully respect their decision, but I did. And there's other things in there that are like that. So I will have a conversation with the chair. And I did let her know also that I was going to object to this. I mean, before the first reading. So I did not blindside her. I don't govern by ambush. And so I just wanted to clear that up, but I do have great respect for her. I continue to have it, and I'll have a continued conversation going over her letter offline. So
normally we don't respond, it's like one of you getting up here, but there's a lot in that letter to unpack in the whole bit. So out of respect, Barbara, the mayor pro tem, is giving her why her.
Yeah,
opinions on
and I'm
that.
not
But normally
going-
when you come up, it's not a
Yeah,
dissertation back and.
no, and I'm not going over it line by line because I could, but I'm just saying in general. And so what you have before you is when I saw the applicability section that's in the packet, you'll see that there's a red line. So I used the wording that's in there, but I redlined it. So it's, if you guys agree, it has that exemption in it for single dwelling unit or two dwelling unit, which is residential other than multifamily. And it allows them to have that exemption, you know, again, they have to meet all building codes, but it allows them to have that exemption, both for those that are existing and any that are built in the future. But that exemption would only stay in place until Planning Commission completes their part two, which I expect I'd be fully okay with, so.
From my standpoint on that, I got Justin involved with the planning commission. We're stringent on all the commercial activities, the larger buildings, more than two. I'm very open on flexibility, as most of you know. Usually I have somebody more stringent than me out different things to my left, but she wanted to be a little bit more flexible. It's not going to change most of these things. This is on the exemption,
It's like this.
Yeah, it is.
It's,
So 99% is exactly the same as we've said before. We look at the recommendations. So I appreciate the flexibility on this. In the 20th century, there was very few rooftop activities. In the 21st century here, we'll be getting a little bit more down at the downs and modern buildings are having that whole next floor to recreate in at times and to do. So we're going to get more of these. And as the buildings are large and do them more than two, it's as stringent as ever. If you're doing one and doing a rooftop use, I am open for that flexibility. So this is very unusual. Barbara's more flexible than I am. Good.
let it be
Others.
written, let it be said.
Others on this one.
No, I'm
Good.
I
Andrew?
just want to walk through it just a little bit so people might know what we're talking about, because it's a very technical discussion here. And if you're not deep into it, it might not flow. So what we're looking at here on the ordinance is there's going to be two sections to this. The one that we have here is what I'll call primarily non-residential zoning districts. But if you walk downtown, for example, you'll see that there are residences that are in those primarily non-residential districts. And that's what we're talking about is this single family in the duplex. So in the document, the language from Planning Commission, they identified shared public commercial and residential private terraces or patios. So there seems to be four different, let's say, sections of ownership between shared public commercial and residential. So then the discussion then focuses here on residential and private use and whether single and family or single and multi-family or single and duplex residences should have the carve out or not. Is that fair? Just so we can level set for everybody?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. So there will be a second section that Planning Commission will work on and put extreme diligence into that covers the primarily residential. And so the question is, do we then set up two sets of ordinance based on, it could be essentially the same home in two different zoning districts governed by two different sets of ordinance, correct?
Correct.
That's what we're talking about. So when we go through the primarily non-residential, we captured a handful of residences and it's just, is it single, dual or multifamily? That's what we're discussing here. Is that fair?
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
All right. I just want to make sure everybody knows because otherwise we're gonna get lost.
As one that was on the planning commission.
Yeah,
at
this
one
is
time.
a
Yep.
planning commission alumni still in therapy, but I'm doing great.
Therapy is good. Mental and physical.
So then just a couple questions on wording here is, so in section 8 it says private residential rooftop terraces or patios that are accessible only from within an individual dwelling unit and intended solely for the use of the occupant of that dwelling unit. Can you unpack what the phrase solely for the use of the occupant of that dwelling unit means? Like if I have me and my wife and 3 kids, does that implicitly mean only 5 people can use that rooftop in that residential setting? Because it reads a little bit that way.
So this means, this is an example of if there's, say, multiple units in a building and they all have access to the same space. This is saying that individual dwelling unit and only the occupants or their guests or whoever,
Yeah. And
That is
maybe
what that means.
if it's, if the council would agree, I might just for a sense of clarity, because that could read literally to mean that my friends can't come over and sit out there, is to say they're occupants of that dwelling unit and their guests.
Occupants doesn't mean owners, so.
Bill, but for somebody who maybe isn't steeped in ordinance, if it doesn't affect the meaning, it might clarify that to some extent.
Well, you might be able to do it by getting rid of solely.
Yeah, so if there's a way we can just, I don't want to change the meaning of that, but I think it could be misinterpreted. And then in section 2, the building of the development, so the building or the development, what would be the difference in this context between a building and a development? Because the development could be multiple buildings, or am I missing something in the development?
That is what you've picked up. A development is more than one building.
Okay, so a building contains common elements or shared use residence of the occupant. Okay, got it. And then I think I might have had one more. When we talk about a potential carve out, so if you had a private residence that was inside, let's say, Cady Street overlay. And so they're fine, we're not going back after them, but at some point that property sells. So we're essentially grandfathering in everybody who's in that district now, if I'm interpreting it correctly. If it sells, someone goes and sells it, does that exemption no longer apply?
No, the exemption doesn't change
So it carries with the residents?
Yep.
with the
Okay,
dwelling.
Carries with the property.
Right.
Yep, okay.
okay. So I don't know if that was made clear in here, so maybe that's another, if we decide to go with this language, that maybe it's just somebody who doesn't live with this and breathe it like yourself might make it more clear. And I think that might be the big one. So really, I think the discussion is the handling of the single and dual family residences inside of a non-primarily residential district. So that's what we have. And so the planning commission said that that was their intentional work, that's correct, that it did apply.
That's their intent.
All right, thank you. I hope
Got
that
it.
helps for everybody. I just wanted to try to simplify it a little bit.
No, I appreciate that,
You
Councilman
got those
Bryan.
inputs.
The walkthrough there, I think, is key. I think we're obviously looking at one section of town and we want to be consistent
Mhm.
in how we're applying things as much as we can. There's different intended use and environment within. But if we're looking at doing carve outs, we should think about that to be consistent to our residents as much as possible, recognizing we have some that are in the primarily commercial district
Right.
and extended. So I think it accomplishes the goal. Appreciate us fighting our way to get there.
Yeah, and conversely, when they get to part 2, the
Right.
residential zoning districts,
We have more discussion.
within those, well, whatever they decide, I mean, you see all the detail. I mean, we all like the detail they have, right?
Yep.
Is when they get to those districts, there are multifamily in those districts. There's even an odd commercial building in those districts, usually a leftover from long ago. So when they write part 2, those will have to be referred back to these part 1 because they won't get the exemption. I mean, because it won't be an exception, it will be their own ordinance. So and this is just a little convoluted because they did it not by building, not by use, but by zoning district. So that's but I mean, that was their way of approaching it, which is fine.
Section by
It's just
section.
left.
Right. The only way to not do it by zoning district is to put an overlay district over the entire city, which we can do, but fine. And maybe that is something that we should recommend to the planning commission. But
I think, Justin, what I might recommend is, back to the planning commission, is if they would be, I'm not advocating one way or the other here, but if they would consider as feedback when they go and look at the second section, if they are ultimately comfortable and then in public feedback comfortable with 2 sets of potential ordinance that apply to residential, depending on where you live. If that is the desired intent, so be it. But maybe if this gets approved, that we just put in there that for you being our conduit back to them to say, is there a way that you can consider evaluation closing that gap or because these are live documents and they can come back in again? That seems to be some desire here to at least evaluate that and consider it. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I give great deference to the planning commission, but that sounds like a desire that might be up here. Is to try to normalize rules for all residents as best as we can.
Any other comments before I open up for public comment? Okay. Anybody that has any comments on this tonight? Going once, going twice. Great. Online, I'm going to let you say that really quick one more time. I know you like when I extend this.
For those calling in, press star 9 to raise your hand. Once called on by the last 4 digits of your phone number, you can unmute yourself by pressing star 6. Please state your name and address for the record. You'll have 2 minutes for your comments.
I am looking, going once. They were told 3 times how to put their hand up. Going twice. Okay. I'm closing it off right now. So right now I'm going to, on 9B, it's consideration of approving the second reading and adoption of amendment to the zoning ordinance to establish standards for rooftop uses in certain zoning districts. You've heard some inputs, minor inputs you heard as we've gone forward here. Again, it's as stringent as it ever would be. If we go in, I'm going to look for a motion here in a second on commercial and larger buildings. The flexibility, I understand the way it was iterated here, that I'm open to that.
And I
But
think a good, if to go with the information that's at the dais, if to address Councilmember Krenz's point, which was a good one, because I think
Right.
people could get confused. The strike in the section with private residential rooftop terraces or patios that are only accessible from an individual dwelling unit and intended strike solely for the use of occupants, and then just say of that dwelling unit.
I would support that.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's a clear.
Good catch. Good
good.
catch.
Any other minor ones? If not, I am looking for a motion to go forward.
Well, from a technical standpoint, if it sounds right now, Lori, you haven't, are you comfortable?
Comfortable.
Okay. How do we do, because if we look at what's in the packet, everything below the applicability section, right, is, the applicability section is submitted as new. That's why it's in red. Everything else is no change. So, but it would be, in that document, it's a red line of the applicability section you submitted. And then there is the easy read, right, with the change of removing solely. How do we get that revised applicability section in?
So I would make
In
the
a move.
motion adopting the language as presented in the packet with the exception that you're replacing subsection 16.9A with the information that's at the dais as modified during discussion.
Okay, you got that over there?
So moved.
Don't move.
Do that.
So that's it.
Can't do that.
You can do
It
that
sounded
motion.
Good. Okay.
Again,
I can't-
99% is exactly the way we got it from planning commission. We are looking at one
It is
sheet here right now and
99.5,
a half a paragraph.
So,
And we try to,
so
You know,
I'm
everybody's
gonna try to
consideration.
do this, but I really wish I could so
Okay.
move you, but I can't.
but we got it on tape, so we'll
Okay.
do it right.
So, city attorney, would you like to
Go
weigh
ahead.
in on this?
Can we do the so move?
Definitely. Well, you can certainly adapt the motion as stated by Justin, first of
Yep.
all.
I
if
get-
you want to
Yep,
do
you
that.
can.
And I agree with the change omitting solely. And I think the explanation was really clear. And this will all be in the minutes at the next meeting. So the record will be very clear as to what's adopted.
And
I was going to ask you anyways, before we went to the final motion.
that's what I.
Just make sure we're legally, we are
Yeah.
good and correct.
So, I so moved, as you said, this was, in relation to what, Justin Quigliotta just said, which was really good. It was a move to approve the second reading and adopt an amendment to the zoning ordinance to establish standards for rooftop uses in certain zoning districts to be effective at the earliest date permissible by applicable law, and to include the amendments as discussed tonight at the dais, and which you have in your possession, correct? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Good. So I have a motion on the floor. Do I have support for them? We have support for that motion. Any other discussion on this motion? Nice job, Justin. We can do this. I believe all in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Okay.
And
Motion
thank you
accepted.
all
Thank
for,
you.
thank you all for
You bet.
bearing with me. Thank you for,
You bet.
Justin, for working.
I appreciate
Good.
the iteration on that. So number 11, city manager communications. Well, let's go to the mayor first. Mayor and council communications here. A lot going on. No, I forgot to say. A lot going on in Northville right now. Remember, I think it'll be a great weekend. We got Northville Folks, which is the Northville Folk Group playing Saturday night downtown at Town Square. Be there. I mean, it'll be a wild time. We have things shut down or just for pedestrian folks on Saturday night because we have so many people, as you know, thousands of people. That's going on. I'll let John talk about the Declan Carter annual run, the 5K. So I will go over that. 3, the Victorian Festival is coming. Today and tomorrow, you can buy all your Victorian wear down at the Millrace Village. I was down there today and they had a lot of people in there buying, a lot of school children, a lot of school children's mothers and fathers buying Victorian dress, and it's in different buildings. It's there tomorrow if you want to get something. The cider mills are open, so get down to the Parmeters right now. And last, it's kind of neat, they have an old car show every year down at in Dearborn at the Village. They had about 50 old-time cars from early in the 19th century at Winchester Elementary, and all the kids got a chance to be part of that today. It was a great activity, a great day, and 50 old-time cars with the guys with their hats on and their visors and their glasses and the whole bit. These are really neat cars. They've done it 2 years in a row, right before the Old Car Festival down at Greenfield Village. But it was great to be part of that today. So that's all I have on that. Add to the Declan Carter.
I'll keep it brief. I feel like I've been teed up. I like how you made it annual, so we're signed up for next year too.
Look forward to that.
That was very smooth. I gotta fit that in there. I honestly just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has leaned in, all of the support for the event. We're gonna have some pretty exciting announcements in the coming days on participation, amount of funds raised, but if you look at the list online, there are so many of our downtown businesses that are included. We are anticipating that it will likely, I was going to say tomorrow, but based on texts I got walking in, it may sell out tonight. So I think we're going to hit our cap of 1,000 runners. And that doesn't even include all the volunteers, of which there's a number in this room who will be volunteering.
20% of everybody in the city of Northville. They'll be there.
It's going to be a wonderful event. And honestly, it's just a great reflection of how incredible this community is. So I think we're going to have a really positive impact when it's all said and done on our Ford Field playground. And I just appreciate and frankly overwhelmed by all of the love and support. Thank you.
John.
See you Saturday.
A couple things. There will also concurrently be the Declan Carter Victory Walk on Saturday morning. I'll be in the
For the
back.
non-runners, you can walk. It's okay. Let it go.
I'll be in the back. I will sacrifice my my time to walk in the back and make sure everybody gets in safely. You're welcome. As much as I would love to run, I will do that for the benefit of the community.
And the family and your health.
If Stones Could Talk, that is it's presented by the Art House. It's a really neat event over at Oakwood Cemetery, which is looking really great. Thank you to the cemetery restoration team. Put it on your calendar for 5 o'clock, October 10th. It's a really neat event to walk through and get some of the history. I'll remind you again in the next meeting. And then also for administration, Justin, we talked about this briefly. And thank you for your input. But now that school's back in, I would like to request that we pay attention to the state of affairs at 7-Eleven North Center. Where that development is, there's debris on the sidewalk. Kids are coming and going now to Ammerman and Hillside, and particularly crossing over to Cabbagetown. If you could work with the developer to make sure everything remains clean because there's kids on bikes or whatever, and if there's limestone, 22A, just takes one kid to wipe out. I think we've already had one fall. And then also to develop a plan as when the sidewalk does move, yay, that we do have a plan that those kids that are walking home can work around that development site. Just so that we have that, if we have to bring in the school crossing guards, whatever we need to do so between, police, planning, George. If there's something that we can socialize over time to the schools or whatever we need to do, because that's a high traffic kid area. And as you see it right now, they walk right on Center Street almost. So know that it's coming, know that it's going to get dark. So I really appreciate anything you guys might be able to do to pull together a plan and socialize it. And that's it.
Great.
Yeah, I just have two. I went to the cemetery and the bridge looks great. So thank you for the timely.
Rural Hill.
Yeah, at Rural Hill. So that's great. And then the schools that are under construction right now, Ammerman, Meads Mill, be kind. They're working it. They're trying. It's not the teacher's fault. It's not the administration fault. They're working, and I think they're doing a good job. So
Great.
that's it for me.
Yeah.
Good point.
Barbara.
And I would just like, there is, just again, we just brush through and say, everything on the consent agenda, we just say motion approved, but there is so much on there. So I thank all of staff for all the work they put into that. Also within our public comment, mentioned that we had a lot of them. We also, again, this week have repeat and updated request related to the Maplewood Park and the pathway area. And I know city staff, we're going to be looking into that, but it looks like there's more going on, whether we did look into it and more things happen. But if you could please pay attention, because that is a very heavily used path. So, and I'll let you address that in a minute. And the last is just, September and October roll into such amazing events. I mean, we have the Victorian Festival. Now we have the annual Declan Run. We have the If Stones Could Talk. I mean, there's so much going on in September, and then the skeletons come alive. And we have that kickoff. And I appreciate there was a lot of work put into event planning and getting that in our consent agenda for all the events coming up. And I really look forward to it. I mean, we're Halloween town, so it's really going to be a fun
Norman
fall.
Rockwell Halloween here.
Yes.
Absolutely. Good. How about from?
So to that point, staff is already looking into details in terms of the pathway to make sure that the easement is maintained and the pathway is there. So
Thanks, George.
we've got a little bit of work to do on that. So also on the Center Street sidewalk, we're aware of the condition of the sidewalk, and the building department is working with the developer to make sure that that's put in better condition. And then when the pathway has to move, sidewalk has to move across the street or where it has to move, that there's a good protected sidewalk for people. So we're looking into both issues directly.
Moving the lanes of traffic and stuff
Yeah,
over.
both the Barb's issue and Councilman Carter.
And just as a reminder on that is that when we did the construction site operations standards and built in fines with that, we don't want to be punitive. Certainly, we know that was never the intent, but we put that in there. So when there's a repeat offenses, that they get the message.
Yep.
So I would just encourage you that if multiple warnings are going out and they're not being complied with in different ways, that we look to what our intent was there. Because that really is, I concur, it's a very critical area, safety and kids. And we know there's a pedestrian crossing there. It's a lot going on.
Yep.
So we don't need construction debris causing problems, or even cars driving by and kicking construction debris onto pedestrians nearby. So all of that. But and thanks for looking into the Maplewood. It sounds like maybe that developer hasn't got the message, George, because it looked like there's a pile of dirt.
Yeah. I think
So-
the Maplewood, we're still trying to examine exactly the ownership and where the lot lines are. So we'll figure that out.
Yeah,
We will
really appreciate it. I know they will too.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Good.
I thank those residents for bringing it to our attention.
Anything else from your standpoint?
Again, as I normally say, I thank all those on those 27 boards and committees and the 5 task forces. You've seen the work that's done. We can get things done because everybody's doing it in town. You know, you're seeing that come to fruition. Ford Field, the River Walk, the 5 sections, which some of them up and going by beginning of next year, maybe the end of this year, and down at Farmers Market. A lot of work from each and every one of you. Appreciate all you're doing. And as you mentioned, the Cemetery Restoration Committee, there's 2 task forces now. You know, if you have another hour at night once in a while, we have the Bicentennial and we have the Cemetery Restoration Group. If you haven't gone over at the Cady Street Cemetery, it's a cemetery that we're redoing all 496 stones. We've rebuilt them. Some were underground. You couldn't read them. We've repositioned them. We put them together. We've cleaned them. We're going to do wrought iron fencing. That will be a stop on our Bicentennial, one of the 10 stops. It's quite something seeing that history come alive. We have not only Civil War, but American Revolutionary War veterans in there. It's one of the oldest cemeteries in the state. So Thank you for your leadership on that and bringing it together. If you haven't walked through there, it's unbelievable what we've done. And some of the people in the audience are the cleaners or the gardeners are doing a lot of stuff. Again, we can get things done for the future. because we have almost 6.5% of all of our population on task force or committees. So thank you very much for all you do. You're making it easy to be up here. I'm looking for a motion for adjournment. I'm sure I'm
So
going to get
moved.
this. Do you have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It's done. Thank you very